Hello and welcome to VarroStories. In this video I will tell you about the Dungeons & Dragons inspired story, The Dragon's Bargain. The village of Thistlebrook nestled in the valley of the Blackstone Reach, a land bordered by mist-covered mountains and dense forests where the light of the sun rarely reached the earth's cold, craggy soil. For years, the people of Thistlebrook lived in peace, their simple lives sustained by farming, hunting, and trading with passing merchants. But that peace was about to shatter, for in the dark shadows of the mountains, an ominous force was stirring. A horde of marauding goblins, known for their bloodthirsty raids and unrelenting savagery, had begun to gather near the village's borders. They had laid waste to nearby settlements, burning crops, slaughtering livestock, and killing any who dared to stand in their way. The village elders, desperate and fearful, convened in the great hall to devise a plan. It was there, in the dimly lit hall where the scent of pinewood and stone lingered in the air, that the first signs of something extraordinary appeared. A figure loomed at the entrance, a wormling dragon. Its scales shimmered in shades of dark emerald, the color of twilight moss, its eyes glowing with a hunger that was both alien and ancient. The villagers, startled by the presence of such a creature, fell into an uneasy silence. They had heard whispers of dragons that roamed the land in the days of old, but these were mere stories told by old men around the hearth. Zinthar, the wormling dragon, surveyed the gathering with an almost predatory calm. Its voice was soft, yet its words carried weight like a mountain. "Do not be afraid," it said, its voice echoing in the minds of all present. "I offer you a bargain." The elders exchanged wary glances, and the air grew thick with uncertainty. In all of history, no creature so powerful had ever sought the aid of a humble village. "What kind of bargain?" asked old Meriel, the village's wisest and most respected elder. Her voice trembled, though whether from fear or age, none could tell. Zinthar lowered its head, a dangerous gleam in its eyes. "I offer you protection. I will drive away the goblins that threaten your home. I will scorch their flesh with my breath, scatter their hordes to the winds, and leave their corpses to rot in the mountains." The villagers listened intently, a mix of hope and skepticism brewing within them. But Zinthar's next words gave them pause. "There is a price, of course," it continued, its tail flicking lazily behind it. "One soul, willingly given. A life for a life. You must offer a soul to me, one of your choosing, and I will fulfill my promise. No tricks, no deceptions. I will protect this village and destroy the goblins, but only in exchange for a soul." The villagers recoiled at the suggestion. A soul? The thought of such a sacrifice sent shivers down their spines. But the goblin threat was growing, and the villagers were terrified of what might happen if they refused. In the quiet that followed, the debate began. Some, more pragmatic, argued that the cost of one soul was a small price to pay if it meant saving the entire village. Others, particularly those with children or loved ones, were reluctant to risk a life for the sake of an uncertain promise. The room buzzed with frantic conversation as the village's fate hung in the balance. It was at that moment that a warrior stepped forward. His name was Eric, a man of considerable strength and courage. His face was weathered from years of battle, and his voice was steady as he spoke. "I will do it," Eric declared. "I will give my soul to the dragon." The villagers turned to him in shock. Eric was beloved in the village, his bravery had earned him the respect of young and old alike. He had been the one to fend off bandits and wild beasts in the past, and now he would sacrifice himself for the greater good. "You are brave, Eric," old Meriel said, her voice thick with emotion. "But your life is worth more than a bargain with a creature such as this. We do not know its true nature." Eric shook his head. "The goblins will destroy us all if we do nothing. If I give my soul, at least my death will be in service of protecting those I love. I am ready." And so, with a heavy heart, the villagers agreed. The deal was struck. Eric, in an act of great selflessness, offered his soul to Zinthar in exchange for the dragon's protection. The dragon's eyes gleamed, and it gave a low, rumbling chuckle that sent a cold shiver through the room. "Very well," Zinthar said, its voice dripping with amusement. "Your soul is mine. I shall honor my side of the bargain, but do not think I am doing this for your sake, mortal. I do it for the thrill of it. Your village will be safe, for now." And with that, the dragon took to the skies, its wings a shadow that blotted out the sun. The villagers watched as it soared away, the sound of its wings echoing like a storm's fury. The following days were filled with a strange, uneasy calm. Zinthar kept its word. The goblins, when they arrived at Thistlebrook, found themselves facing a wrath they had not anticipated. The dragon descended upon them with fire and fury, burning their warbands to ash, scattering their numbers in a great maelstrom of death. The invaders were routed, and their remnants fled back into the mountains. But even as the village rejoiced, Eric began to feel the weight of the bargain. His soul, bound to Zinthar, was no longer his own. Though he still walked among the villagers, his heart grew heavy with an inescapable emptiness. A cold presence lingered at the edge of his mind, a constant reminder of the price he had paid. Then, on the evening of the dragon's victory, as Eric sat by the fire in his humble cottage, a familiar voice whispered through his thoughts. "It is time," Zinthar's voice echoed inside his head. "Your soul is mine now. Come." Eric stood, his body moving on its own, as if some unseen force was guiding his every step. He left his home, walking through the village, heedless of the concerned calls of his friends. The villagers did not understand what was happening, but none dared to stop him. They had witnessed the dragon's power, and they feared it. When Eric reached the edge of the village, Zinthar appeared before him, its massive form looming in the sky, casting a long shadow over the land. The wormling's eyes glowed with a cruel, mocking light. "Did you think I would honor your sacrifice, mortal?" Zinthar sneered. "No. Your soul was never the price for your village's safety. Your soul was the prize, and now it is mine, to do with as I please." Eric's heart sank as the realization hit him. He had been a fool, tricked by the dragon's words. The village was safe, yes, but at the cost of his very essence. And now, Zinthar's amusement would take the form of torment, a plaything for the dragon's cruel whims. "I gave everything for this," Eric whispered, his voice breaking. "And this is how you repay me?" Zinthar laughed, a deep, reverberating sound that echoed through the valley. "You gave everything, yes," the dragon said. "But you were never more than a pawn in my game." And with that, Eric's soul was claimed, his body falling lifeless to the ground. The villagers, having watched helplessly from the village, could do nothing but mourn the loss of their hero. But the story did not end there. In the years that followed, Thistlebrook prospered. The goblins never returned, and the village flourished in peace, though always with the shadow of Zinthar's bargain looming overhead. The tale of Eric's sacrifice became a legend, a warning whispered to children by their parents. And far away, in the dark recesses of the mountains, the wormling dragon, now fully grown, reveled in its power, its amusement at the cost of a single soul never waning. The years passed in Thistlebrook, and the peace that had once felt fragile, like the calm before a storm, began to settle into a false sense of permanence. The villagers continued to live their lives as though nothing had ever happened, the price of their safety fading into distant memory. But though they lived in tranquility, a dark and ever-present tension clung to their hearts, an unspoken fear that the bargain made with Zinthar was far from over. In the heart of the village, Eric's name was spoken only in hushed reverence, his sacrifice immortalized in stone statues and tales passed down through generations. His face, forever etched in the memory of the people, had become a symbol of selflessness. Yet, not one among them dared to ask what had truly become of the man who had given everything for their protection. It was on the eve of the village's harvest festival, when the moon hung low and heavy in the sky, that a new threat appeared, though it was not of goblins or marauders. It came in the form of a wandering stranger, cloaked in tattered garments and with eyes that seemed to shimmer with an unnatural light. He entered Thistlebrook quietly, unnoticed at first, but soon enough, whispers began to spread. The stranger moved through the village like a shadow, pausing only at the village well, where he finally spoke. His voice was familiar, though no one could place where they had heard it before. "Is there no one left to remember the cost of this piece?" he asked, his tone a low rasp that sent shivers through those who overheard. The dragon's bargain has not gone unfulfilled. At first, the villagers dismissed him as a madman or a beggar, though his words lingered uneasily in the air. But as the days wore on, they could not ignore the feeling that something was wrong. A lingering coldness began to creep into the land, like an invisible presence that watched over them from the mountains. The crops, which had once thrived, began to wither in the soil, and the animals that roamed the forest seemed to grow thin and sickly. One evening, as a thick fog rolled down from the mountains, blanketing the village in a suffocating haze, the villagers gathered at the great hall once more. Their faces were drawn with concern, their voices frantic. There was no doubt in their minds, something had changed, and it was tied to Eric's bargain with the dragon. They had been living under an illusion of safety, and now, that illusion was crumbling. It was then that old Merrill spoke, her voice trembling with the weight of years and knowledge. "We have made a grave mistake," she said, her gaze fixed on the stranger who had appeared in their midst. "The peace we were promised was never meant to last. Zinthar did not just take Eric's soul, it took something from us all. The dragon's price was not only a life, it was a debt, one that will be paid again and again until there is nothing left to give." The stranger nodded, his eyes filled with a sorrow that the villagers could not understand. "I came here to warn you," he said. "For what you think is peace, is only the calm before the storm. The dragon's hunger does not end with one soul. It is insatiable." The words hung heavy in the air, a dark prophecy that seemed to stir the shadows themselves. The villagers knew, deep down, that they could not wait any longer. The price would come due, and this time, there would be no hero to stand in the way. That night, a small group of the bravest villagers gathered at the edge of the village, armed with little more than their resolve and a desperate hope. They knew they had no choice but to face Zinthar, to confront the dragon that had claimed Eric and twisted the very peace it had promised. As they journeyed toward the mountains, the fog grew thicker, and the air became stifling with the weight of dread. It was then that the earth trembled beneath their feet, a low rumbling that seemed to come from the very heart of the mountains themselves. The dragon had sensed their approach. And when they finally reached the summit, the sight before them was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Zinthar, now fully grown, stood atop a jagged cliff, its immense form casting an enormous shadow over the valley below. Its emerald scales gleamed like molten glass, its wings stretching to the heavens, and its eyes glowed with a fierce, predatory light. "So, you have come," Zinthar said, its voice reverberating through the very air. "You think you can take back what was never truly yours to begin with?" The villagers, their hearts heavy with the weight of their ancestors' choices, stood firm. "We will not let you claim any more," one of them said, his voice shaking but resolute. "We offer ourselves, if that is what you demand." Zinthar's laugh was dark and hollow. "You do not understand, do you? The bargain is sealed. What is given can never be undone. There is no taking back what has been offered." With those words, the dragon spread its wings and ascended into the night sky, leaving the villagers below in the suffocating fog, their fate sealed in the shadow of the dragon's eternal hunger. And though their sacrifice might not be enough, it was clear that the village of Thistlebrook, like so many before it, had become nothing more than a pawn in the dragon's ceaseless game. Thank you for making it to the end. Please feel free to use this story as inspiration for your games.